Hello, everybody, and welcome to Science and Nature Untapped, a free monthly virtual speaker series brought to you by the River Institute. My name is Stephanie Hildebrand, and I'll be your host for this evening. Before we begin, we'd like to acknowledge that many of us are living on unceded land and traditional territory of Indigenous people. We are grateful for the opportunity to live where we do, and we thank all generations of people who have continued their responsibilities to Mother Earth since time immemorial. If ever you're interested in learning more about our programs, education, research, or next events, you can follow us on either Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook at the following handles. And if ever you wanted to rewatch any of the Science and Nature on taps, you can visit riverinstitute.ca on tap, and you'll be able to find all the videos for the Science and Nature series since we've been doing it online. For upcoming events on April 7th, 2020, well, of course, 2021, anyways, April 7th, we have Dr. Alison Derry from UQAM, who will be speaking about invasive species. And for May 5th, instead of Science and Nature Untapped, we'll be doing a year in review for the River Institute for 2020. I think this will be a great opportunity for everyone to meet our team and meet our people and hear about this crazy year that we've had. A lot of our events and our research are sponsored by generous donors. So if ever you were interested in supporting us through a donation, you can go to riverinstitute.ca/donate. But of course, if you're unable to donate, it's always just great to share our material on social media, talk to your friends about us. That goes a really long way. So for tonight, we will be speaking about the Maitland Tower site, combining history, nature, community, and social enterprise. First, we'll be having Philip Ling. He's a nature bug, electrical engineer, clean tech entrepreneur, and philanthropist. 25 years ago, he co-founded Powersmiths, a manufacturer of energy-saving power systems for clients across North America, which he sold in 2018. In 2012, Philip took the Biomimicry Specialist Certification with the Biomimicry Institute, where he studied how nature can inspire regenerative solutions to design problems. His family has a conservation agreement for their 400 acres of provincially significant wetland, and were Markham Hydro's first solar-powered home. And second, we will be having Michèle Andrews, who spent the first 15 years of her career in the corporate sector in marketing, strategy, leadership, and organizational transformation before making the switch to independent school administration. Recently, she led a National Green Schools project with the Canadian Accredited Independent Schools Association. She is a climate reality leader and a volunteer ambassador and Living Future accredited member of the International Living Future Institute. She brings her deep passion for creating a just, beautiful, and regenerated world to work each day. So thank you very much for joining us, and it's all yours. You may share your slides.
All right, so can you see my slide now?
Yeah, I think it's up. Yep.
Okay, great. Well, thanks very much, Stephanie, for the introduction. Michèle and I are super excited to share, the story and our journey at the Maitland Tower. This is a picture of it from a drone, and as you can see, it's a pretty interesting place. I mean, there's not many towers you see when you're driving along Route 2 on between Brockville and Prescott, and it's just an amazing place that we can't wait to share. So as Stephanie said, nature bug, I think it all starts when you're young, and to me it sort of charts your course a lot. Of course, for me, at my age of 60, Jacques Cousteau was my hero back in the day, and I tell you, that stays with you forever. And to me, what's partly amazing about the Maitland Tower is here we are right on the St. Lawrence River, and I look forward to getting in there and diving and making a difference to the environment along this amazing St. Lawrence River. So where is Maitland Tower? Well, the name Maitland, so Maitland is the little village. If you look at the corners of the map, it's basically central to, it's between Kingston and Cornwall, so it's about an hour each way, and it's about an hour straight south of Ottawa, right along the Narrows, along the St. Lawrence. So how I ended up there, I mean, I live in Markham, so just north of Toronto, and it was back in 2016, I decided to do a solo ride on my bicycle from Markham all the way to Acadia, where my wife's family grew up. And you know, it was amazing trip, and it was, of course, you go along the Great Lakes Waterfront Trail, which is Route 2 when you go through Kingston and beyond. And so that's how I ended up seeing this place. Literally, I rode past it, and I saw this beautiful property that said for sale, and I just, I'd been riding out, and so many places, that you see with these old stone, sort of derelict buildings, you can just see that, with a waterfront property, they're just ripe to be, torn down, bulldozed, and then some modern building just, put in there and the land divided up. And then as I kept riding, I thought, well, I could do something about that. I could buy it and make sure that didn't happen. So that's what I did. So here I am, ending up with this beautiful place. One of the first things I noticed is I hadn't really thought about it, but of course it is part of the St. Lawrence Seaway. So one of the first boats that I saw go by was this one here, where you can see the wind turbine blades. So it's kind of exciting to see, renewable energy flowing and in the future as a function of these ships that are going up and down the river. So amazing. That was certainly a fun thing to see, and those boats you really get mesmerized by those boats going by. So here's an overview of the property. So it's a point of land, and you can see County Road 2, going from one side to the other, west to east, and so there is basically a triangle of land, and you can see on the west side it's pretty forested. On the point there's a manor that's been there for over 200 years, and it's a very sort of manicured place. And then there's fields in the middle, and then over to the right-hand side, you see the buildings, and there's horse stables, there's a garage, the tower is there, and then there's another building called the Charts Building, or the Chart House, which was another commercial building that was attached to the mill back in the day when it was founded. So how all of that happened, basically starting in the 1750s, it was part of the French-English War was going on, and the French built a fort there right at that point. So you can see actually over here at the bottom right-hand corner, there is the point, right? So they built this, this palisade and, fort to defend. And they built a couple of tall ships there as well, which sort of makes it pretty interesting. And Pointe au Baril is the name of that point, as it was named back in the 1750s. So here we were in the middle of this skirmish, and it seems such a small distance, between Canada and the U.S. the other side. So these boats, would not be too far from each other, and there would be, quite the battles. So the tower, well, the tower wasn't built as this empty thing. It was built, of course, as a windmill, and this is the windmill up in Johnstown, and it's a 6-story windmill. Ours in Maitland is 8 stories, but essentially identical. So, about the 3rd floor, there was a ring around there so that you could adjust the windmill sails, and you could see, these windmill blades rather are 50 feet long each. So they're huge things. But so that's what it would have looked like in the day. And, being part of a mill, well, for a mill to be successful, you have to have scale. And so you can see the tower, and then around it, you've got this big complex of buildings. And right now you can see in the pictures that I showed you, none of them are there. So you've got these big stone buildings that were there, and a brick tower, a chimney, all that's gone. But back in the day, they didn't do anything with those buildings in terms of trucking them away. They basically just bulldozed them and pushed them into the water, so which we'll get into in a second. So it didn't take long before the mill business, and it was turned into a distillery, as like the Toronto mill turned into a distillery as well. Most of these mills did. And it was actually shut down by John A. Macdonald just 2 years before he became the first prime minister. So it was a pretty interesting sort of place, and that car reminds me sort of a Bonnie and Clyde kind of scenario with the buildings back then. But as you can see, when you don't use something, it just starts to fall apart, right? But in that building next to it, there was commercial activity in the from 1930 1970s, and there was a company called Maitland Charts, and it was still in the family. So the same family that owned the house on the point owned that whole property. And so he was a very creative engineer, and he designed these presses himself, and it was the building was full of them, and it was for sonar paper for submarines during the war, and very, very interesting stuff that went on there. Anyway, so that was the sort of most recent commercial life. And here's a picture of that press. I mean, it's 12 feet long and it weighs a ton, and it's quite the thing to see running. And the other thing that was there, I mentioned the stables. There was the stables were very well known in their time, and one of Canada's big horses, Big Ben, was tied into those stables. So so it has a very interesting horse history as well. So as you can see, quite an adventurous place. So, but once it looks kind of nice and beautiful from the distance, and then you start to peel the onion, you go inside these buildings. So this is inside the tower, and you can see everything is crumbling, right? We have this scaffolding had to be put up. It was one of the first things I had to do, because literally with the tower sort of sloping inwards, all these stones were starting to fall into the ground, and so there was a real risk that it was falling apart. This is on the right is John Cook. He's a really well-known historical structural engineer. He reworked the Rideau Canal locks and worked on the Parliament building. So these stone buildings, he knows them and he knows what to do. And so we basically, followed all of his instructions as he really helped us take care over 3 years to fix the inside of that tower, which is amazing. So of course, I mentioned about bulldozing. Well, this is what happens when you take, those big stone buildings and you bulldoze them and just push them down to the water, is you end up with all kinds of cement in the water there. You can see a piece of rebar sticking out. I mean, it's like Roger Dangerfield saying, I don't get no respect. Well, this is one of those places where it's just an example of the environment not getting any respect. So it really needs not just restoration of the buildings, but restoration of the environmental, side of the property and the shoreline especially. So, with that, of course, that challenge, we're going, okay, I really want to do something. I don't want this history to crumble. That's why I bought the place, and I, spent all that time fixing up the inside of the tower to say, okay, so now it's stabilized. We've got a lot of work to do. So what should we aim for? And, so many things in the in the industrial and commercial world, we're looking at making buildings better, but all of those standards are really about making them less bad, right? I'm going to use less energy, I'm going to burn less fuel, and you're going, okay, it's better than not doing it, but it's still being less bad. And personally, I don't find that very motivating. So what I set out to find was a standard that actually resulted in a place that was better than before. Right, so the question comes up, what does good look like? And I'll hand it over to Michèle to talk about it.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Philip. Nice to be here. And I'm watching a little bit in the chat. I see there's somebody from just down the road from the tower watching. So great to have people. Awesome. Great to have people joining. Yeah. So what does good look like? So Philip and I go back, we met, I don't know, many 10, 15 years ago now, and we are friends and our kids are friends, and we met in a nature-based educational system, basically. And so I'm also a nature bug, and I've all my life I felt like I wanted to do what's right for the environment and to do my part. And when Philip bought this property, he was telling us about it, of course, and we got excited and we came to see it. And then he found this question, and this question was in the form of a building standard called the Living Building Challenge and the Living Community Challenge. So I'm going to tell you a bit about those. But before I do, I want to just dig into this question a little more. So you can flip to the next slide, Philip.
Sure.
So,
oops, sorry, too fast.
Oh, yeah, this one. That's okay. So we are really motivated to do the right thing and to do our part. I know so many people are trying to figure out what is their part, what can they do. And I've been studying different green initiatives for some time now. And what I've come to understand that in 2021, we're not really talking about sustainability anymore. The word sustainability, and I saw a brilliant architect, a Canadian architect, Christine Lintott, speak about this just the other night again. But sustainability sort of brings to mind this idea of sort of holding status quo to some degree, keeping things kind of where they are, making sure nothing gets worse. But it doesn't really bring to mind what could we do that would be better. And when you look around, we've done damage here, and there's we've done damage to the earth, and there's so many people that are also in need of a healthier place to live for themselves, for their own health and wellness. So this word regeneration is more and more what people talk about when they talk about what is needed in 2021 to address our challenges. And the other thing that's certainly coming up as a result of the pandemic is this idea that there are intersecting crises, that we have people that have been left behind for years, decades, centuries, and people that have been wronged, and people that we need to really join with and make sure that as we recover from the pandemic and as we address the climate crisis, we do so knowing that there are people that are quite vulnerable that really need us to think of them as we create solutions to the climate crisis, to the social crisis, to the pandemic, all these things. So there's a real intersection of all these things going on. And I get really excited about thinking about that. And this probably is a slide you can't all read. I will read you this. These are the 6 principles of a just recovery. And these were put together, I think, originally by 350.org, which is a global environmental organization, and hundreds of different non-governmental organizations and different social groups have signed on to say, when we build back after the pandemic, this is what we need to be thinking about. We need to be thinking about putting people's health and well-being first, no exceptions. We need to strengthen the social safety nets and provide relief directly to people. We need to prioritize the needs of workers and communities. We need to build resilience to prevent future crises. We need to build solidarity and equity across communities, generations, and borders. And we need to uphold Indigenous rights and work in partnership with our Indigenous peoples. So to this idea of regeneration, this to me really resonates, and I wonder if it does with all of you. Feel free to throw something in the chat if you want to comment or question. We'd be happy to talk about it more. But if you want to go to the next slide, Philip. So back to this question, what does good look like? So there was an architect, a Canadian architect named Jason McLennan. He's a visionary, he's brilliant, and he's actually a consultant on our project too. He's now living in the West Coast in the US, but he, about 15 years ago, was also, like Philip, talking about, why I don't want to be just less toxic, less energy use, less, water use. I want to know what good looks like. What would it look like if every single act of building, renovation, restoration, design made the world a better place? So this is the question. So he developed something called the Living Building Challenge. And then later the Living Community Challenge was born, and a whole suite of standards that ask this question: what does good look like? So they use the metaphor of a flower and a forest, and they talk about the performance areas as petals. So these are the 7 petals of the Living Building and Living Community Challenges. And you could think of them just as categories as well. So place, which is so important to understand where something is. And if you think about the metaphor of a flower, it is rooted in place, and it's indigenous to the local species, and there's symbiosis between people and the species around it. There's just so many things about that flower metaphor that do follow all of these petals. So place is one, and to really honor and understand the place you're at, and make any decision around building design, renovation, restoration, one that is really grounded in place. Then water. So they invite, in fact, as this is a challenge, and they use that word for many good reasons. They invite us to have 105% of our water use generated from the place that you're in, your site, your building. So that's about capturing rainwater and transforming it so it's potable, and all kinds of other things that treat water as a precious, precious resource that we must actually be thinking about how to generate more of and give more than we are using. And in a place like the St. Lawrence River, you can get a bit apathetic about that, right? It just looks like we have so much, or anywhere along the Great Lakes, you go, how could we ever run out of water? And in fact, I saw an expert recently talk about a development upcoming, and they actually reassured everybody that although there'll be a lot of water use, we don't have any freshwater problems around here. It's fine. Well, gosh, that's really not something. That's not how we should be thinking about these things. So water is another. Energy. They also require that you create 105% of your energy with renewable sources on your site, or if not right on your site, nearby. So that's really something. Health and happiness, and this one is one of the ones that really was so engaging and so inspiring to know that this is actually a performance standard that they invite all builders and designers and architects and engineers to think about. Is what is the health giving impact of the building, the project that you're working on. Materials is another, and this can be a typical performance standard in some building practices, but in this case, they identify, we are asked to identify toxins in all our materials and try to be something called red list free. So there's a red list of toxins that you find so commonly in building materials these days. And we are required to understand what's in our materials, advocate to find materials that are not toxic, and where we can possibly do it, use them in our projects. And then these last two, equity and beauty, are also very unusual for a performance standard for a building, but really speak to us. So equity, speaks back to those 6 principles of a just recovery, really. And so how are we ensuring that the manner in which we are, working on the site, it treats everyone appropriately, that people are earning an appropriate living wage or more, working on projects, that we think of people in so many different ways when we're making a building and design choice. And then the last one is beauty. Just, they require you, go figure, they require you to have things that are beautiful, that are just for the sake of enjoyment and for no other functional purpose at all, except to just be lovely. So this really spoke to Philip. I know I'm speaking for him when I say that, and it absolutely spoke to us as well. And so when he put together his team, we were signed right in to take this on. And then through the course of things, we realized that what we needed to do was actually, out of the Maitland Tower setting, we wanted to actually create a not-for-profit that would focus on some of these social aspects and the community building aspects of the work we were doing on the site, and to really sort of bring to life the Living Building Challenge ideas in really practical ways. So last fall, we founded this not-for-profit called doornumber1.org. And it's a not-for-profit, and it's basically the same team of people that have started it, that we've been working on Maitland Tower with Philip. And our mission, as we describe it, is to provide practical inspiration for the transition to a just, beautiful, and regenerated world. And we're going to do that in really practical ways. As we're using that on purpose. We're going to demonstrate things, we're going to build things, we're going to run workshops, we're going to work in the deep green space, and we're going to look to do so much involving really social impact as well as environmental impact. So much so that actually what we want to make the site at Maitland an innovation hub for social entrepreneurs. And those are people that are trying to work on the intersecting crises that I talked about, whether it's health, hunger, environmental, economic development in rural areas like the one we're situated in. All these things, we hope that our site over time, as we build out these buildings and whatnot, that will be really what comes of our site. And we hope to be engaging schools, families, businesses, governments, neighbors, everybody in this work over time. So one of our first big projects we're so excited about is, and it comes out of a wonderful relationship that we are building with the River Institute and others, is to take a three-year look at an ecological restoration of the whole 13-acre site. So we're showing this to you again to show you kind of end to end. We're gonna take the whole thing, and we've put together what I'm calling a bit of a dream team. So you want the next slide, Philip, is all these people have signed on to join us, and we're just so delighted. Water Rangers, you may know, I know they've been on this in this series before, Watersheds Canada, South Nation Conservation Authority, and of course Maitland Tower, door number 1. And also we are really feeling honored that the Mohawk Council of Akwesasne has agreed to sign on. And we want to, from the get-go, to have traditional Indigenous knowledge really inform the design of all the ecological restoration on the site, and explore lots of other ways that we can build relationship with our Indigenous neighbors and others up and down the river, and just see if we can help use this site to help take a step forward in the reconciliation that we all, is a path I know we're all on together. So we're really excited. We actually just submitted a grant proposal today for this project, so it's living large in our minds right now. But with or without the grant, we are proceeding with this team and others, and I'll just walk you quickly through some of the ecological interest points that we're going to be trying to address. So going from west to east on a bit of a photographic tour, we have lovely wetlands and a little creek and a great forest area. And some of it's quite naturalized. We actually don't have a picture of this, but there is actually also, though, in this a culvert that opens, a stormwater culvert that opens and basically pours into this little creek on the top right corner there, and only a few meters to the St. Lawrence. And we don't know what's coming out of that culvert, but it's probably not well filtered. So although it looks beautiful and it's more naturalized than some of our other areas, we know that there's work to do, and we've had an ecological assessment started, and we've worked with South Nation, and we know that there's things we can do to restore the wetlands, to build new habitat, to address invasive species that are in there, and try to put some Indigenous species in their places. So that's the western portion. Then moving along the point. So on that bottom picture, you can actually see where that little creek flows out into the St. Lawrence there. And then you see this beautifully manicured lawn and these trees that are all pruned to let the view of the river in, and not a whole lot of vegetation other than the grass. And we are going to turn this into a spot where we can really showcase some of the work that Watersheds Canada does, for example, and others, to naturalize lawns and ensure that any water runoff off the lawns, it's being properly and naturally filtered before it lands in the river, to create more habitat. If you can imagine a wee fox or something running from east to west, they would get to a point there, and they wouldn't necessarily be able to find cover to dash across. And so creating some more, low but appropriate habitat with the advice of our partners is something we're going to do. And pollinators, we are, there's so many opportunities to attract more pollinators and feed our pollinators. So pollinator gardens will be something that we'll be planning for as well. Yeah, there's another lovely shot of the site. And then as we go forward, or go further east, you see these were at some point there were farm fields. There were something like 1,000 head of cattle or something on these fields back in the day. And apparently when we did some archaeological work, they said everything was so compacted and it was probably all those cows. Anyway, so there's some regeneration of the earth there, and we can be putting in all kinds of different plantings, trees, shrubs, and we actually are going to work with a permaculture consultant and hopefully put in a demonstration permaculture garden as well. So we're really excited about that middle area becoming a garden. And also, it's not there in this shot, but actually, if you go back, Philip, just I want to point out while we're on this shot that just to the east, maybe Philip, you can put your cursor where our garden is now. Last year, we actually put in a 6,000 square foot garden in a bit of a hurry as a response to the pandemic. And we we didn't know quite what we'd do with it because the site was shut down and we were all in our pandemic mode. But we did ultimately cultivate and grow veggies and donate them all to Interval House in Brockville and Loaves and Fishes, that is like a soup kitchen in Brockville, and then the Prescott Food Bank and also a food bank up in Merrickville. And so we were happy to do what we could, and we hope to build on that this year and keep growing for our community as well, and ultimately create a bigger garden experience. And we will just have to figure out how to do that in the context of COVID. Anyway, so then moving, as you see, going a little further east along the property, we get into that industrial section that Philip talked about, and there's a whole lot of work to be done here in the ecological restoration. So we look forward to it. And back to that picture, there's that piece of rebar, and I know that Philip and our project manager, Todd Royer, and others have tried and cannot get that bit of rebar out of there. They really like to, and there's much more around there that you see as well. So this ecological restoration span the whole 3 years and probably longer. The River Institute's going to partner with us to really do an inventory of species and track the impact. And then we're going to engage with our community to, join us when we're trying to do plantings. And then there'll be demonstrations by water rangers, watersheds, South Nation, the Mohawk Council, others. We're gonna look for all kinds of ways to engage everybody that's interested on the site, and we'll also try to keep up the virtual thing for people that live further away or can't get there. And so many other things that we are excited to do. We're going to become a site for the River Institute's Eastern Ontario Water Festival for children in 2022. Watch for that. But lots of great plans connected to this ecological restoration, because our goal really is to not only do this ecological restoration, but to demonstrate some strategies and to teach skills and bring knowledge to folks that are interested, so that people can take it back and on their own properties, apply some of our learning and take their own action. So that's really what it is all about. So I think that's, did I miss anything on that project, Philip? Anything you would add?
No, that's good. I mean, what I'll do is I'll show you what we've done so far in terms of the restoration. So, yeah. This is standing at the bottom of the tower on the inside, obviously looking up, and you can see it's a pretty spectacular view. And it's fortunately, now that we've done all that 3 years of restoration, this is going to be around for a long time. And you can see the remnants of the floors before we left those beams in, because they all burned down. There was a fire in the late 1800s that burned the 8 stories, all the wood floors down. But you can see that everything it's such in beautiful shape to be able to look up and see what it was. So that's a real accomplishment that we've made. So the next thing is the building just to the east. Is the chart house. So that was the Webster's where he had all his presses, and so that was a real commercial building. But it's been around since the 1820s, and it was the general store related to the mill when the tower was producing. As you can see, all kinds of really not good condition. So at the beginning of last summer and the summer before, we started working on it. So as you can see, the roof was stripped off. All the stonework was stripped down and repointed. So with new mortar of the same kind of mortar that was in before, a special kind of breathable mortar that they used 200 years ago. And as you can see, there's a wood frame going up. That is a timber frame, which you'll see is beautiful. And we got that wood from local barns, and a local woodworking team did all of that timber framing. So it really is a very special thing. This is what the chart house is going to look like on the inside. You can see all the beams are going to be wide open, right up to the ceiling. The stone walls are going to be left completely exposed, so you'll be able to see them, touch them, and really connect with the roots of this building. And it's going to be, it's going to be beautiful. So this is what it's going to look like from the water, right? So so a lot of glass and stone and solar panels filling the roof. There's going to be a beautiful deck, and of course, the view out onto the water is spectacular. And really, the goal is for this place to be a meeting place, a gathering place where, as Michèle talked about, we want this site to become a hub for the next generation of social entrepreneurs. So people who are trying to figure out how can I do good and do good to the environment and do good socially and have a social enterprise as opposed to just creating a business for profit to make money, right? We've seen the consequences of that, and the opportunity here is to bring like-minded people who come from all kinds of diverse backgrounds and want to do all kinds of different things, but with the common theme of I want to make a difference to people and I want to make a difference to the environment. So super exciting to have this done, and we're shooting for the end of the summer. Of course, with COVID, who knows? But it's progressing along, and if not August, it'll be September. So one way or another, it's really on its way. So basically, where we want to go from here is something that is even, I mean, COVID is the big problem for everybody, because obviously we want the community to be involved in all of that restoration work and the gardens and so on. But I mean, really, who knows how exactly that's going to play out in the spring? So we want people to be as involved as they can be realistically. So I guess that's basically where we're at. I know, Michèle, you had some questions regarding from people about how they can get more involved and walk through how we're gonna navigate the COVID and really connect as many people as possible to the restoration of the property. I find one of the things, I'm sure you've heard the expression, you protect what you love. And for all these years, this property has been a private estate in the same family for the 200 years. And so I'm kind of the first outsider. And I mean, my mission really is to say, okay, this is what happens, in a post-industrial sort of time. And when people are connected to the restoration, are connected to nature, literally walking across the street for this busy County Road 2 to be able to see that their hands are transforming, this industrial site into, a beautiful environmental place where they can, they can relax and be part of, restoration on so many more levels. Is to me that's what gets me excited. I mean, and I think that when you get your hands dirty in the soil here, that you'll be more inclined to get them dirty in the soil back at your house and get excited about what things you can grow and what things you can do to make the environment a better place.
So maybe I can just build on that, Philip, and just tell people that, so first of all, our website is doornumber1.org. It is at the moment a temporary website. Don't judge us. We're working on a better one, a professional one, but we wanted to have something up as we started to talk a little bit about some of what's going on. And as I said, the community garden is a place we'd love to get people to join us. We just don't quite know yet how that's going to work, but if you're interested, stay tuned. Something else that we did last year to some degree, and we'll try to do more of this year, is we just contributed to the campaign called Grow a Row, which you probably know of as well. And there's a website if you haven't heard of it, but it's the idea that you grow an extra row in your own vegetable garden and you donate those proceeds to a local organization that's supporting food insecurity in your area. And it's a national organization, and I think it's brilliant. So what you could do right now, if nothing else, is start planting those seeds and think about what you might grow extra and donate locally. We will be having demonstrations on site this summer and fall. Again, scheduling is not figured out yet, and how to do that in the COVID safe way will depend as the moments move forward. And then There will be need of volunteers, and I think I said that too. Probably not so many this year on anything, but certainly by next spring and summer, we'll have lots of opportunity for volunteers to join us. But so to some degree, you can get involved this year, and then much more to come as we go forward. So maybe we can come back and visit another time and talk more about things as they unfold. So with that, we thought we'd just let the rest of the time be for any questions that have arisen or that you might have. We would be delighted to speak about any of these topics that we've raised tonight.
It's been fantastic to plug into the River Institute and get to know the people there, and they're as excited as we are about nature, which is great when you bump into like-minded people like that. And I look back, childhood wise, with Jacques Cousteau and me, wanting to be a marine biologist and all, I figured, as the ability to do science here is and work closely with with people who are really in that world, is to me such a wonderful gift, really. And I thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Philip and Michèle. So great to be sharing this project with us and your holistic and inclusive way of approaching the project as well. We do have a few questions from the public, so I'll start with one. Is there a report card or form of metrics? And I think the person they had asked when you started speaking about the Living Building Challenge, maybe I'm wrong, but I think maybe that's what they're referring to.
Sure. So there's actually quite a stringent set of requirements, and so when you go for this challenge, you actually register with them and you work with them to learn more. And there's also different levels of certification, so you don't have to go for all of everything. They have steps along the way, which is, thank goodness. And something else that they do is that they actually, unlike other building programs, some of the metrics you don't actually provide until 1 year after occupancy, when you can demonstrate that the air is cleaner, that the budget for energy is actually, you're exceeding your power generation, for example, or that you're doing to the water what you said you would do, and that kind of thing. So there's quite a whole standard and a whole process to report to them, and it's the International Living Future Institute is the organization that houses these standards, and they have some kind of an auditing process, and they work with you to set it up, but certainly they have a third-party auditor to make sure that before they give you the certification that you've actually been able to demonstrate whichever parts of the challenge you were going for. And what you typically see is that buildings get them over time. So people get the water pedal, and then they get the energy pedal, and then they and they sort of move up through things over time sometimes. So and you can look for it on Google Living Building Challenge, and you'll find more information. I hope did you think that answers the question? Anything you would add, Philip?
No, I think that I think the what I found really gratifying about it was that it is very much a performance-based standard. It's not, as you said, a lot of other standards are based on models, and so this is the model of a base building, and this is the model of what your building will be, and this is very different from that. So as Michèle said, it may take you 2 or 3 years to achieve the water pedal, which is being neutral and positive on water on your site. It may take a couple of years before you can prove it. Same thing with energy. You may put a certain amount of solar panels on and wind generation and so on based on the math of the design, but then, hey, the real world is different, and you may find that you're 10% short. And so you go, okay, I guess I'm not gonna get that certification until I can figure out how to, boost my production up to the point where I am positive, and then I have to run for a whole year showing that I'm positive, and then I can get certification on that. So it really is very much a show me, right? And which I love about it, because the goal is so positive. So you want to make sure that everyone who says they do it are really doing it.
Thank you for that insight, and it makes sense. I mean, it takes time for these projects. So The next question is from Elaine Kennedy. She's asking, are the buildings on the site on a municipal sewage system or septic? If septic, do you plan on doing education about the importance of looking after a septic system?
Sure. The answer is we're not on sorry about that. the tongue twister. No, we're not on. There is no municipal treatment out along that stretch of Highway 2. So everybody is on septic, and that is that is actually part of the water pedal, and it's obviously very important because there's so many issues with septic systems being, coming from houses and other buildings that are right close to the water, and leakage into the water if there's a flood and so on, or if the system isn't working properly. So we have to do a very comprehensive treatment process. So right now with the one building, the chart house that we're working on, there's a septic tank for that, and there are pumps that take it way up the hill up to about the tower level. So it's, far away from the water. And again, that's all measured and proven. As we work with the other buildings, the septic system is going to be one system for several buildings, and it's going to be up a lot closer to the road. So in the middle of the field where we have a large area to drain on. And again, we'll be measuring the quality of the water at the source, and then the quality of water down by the river to make sure that that nothing at all is going into the water. And the goal again of the and the requirement of the water pedal is that the water is cleaner going into the river than it was at the beginning when you started measuring it. So you're always, again, it's this idea of making a positive difference and proving it.
Great, thank you, Philip.
Oh, and sorry,
the
one little answer regarding education. Absolutely, the education is a fundamental component, which is again why we set up door number one. Is we realize the techniques that we use, we're not just doing them for ourselves. The idea is we're willing to to do more work and to maybe look at newer technologies than most people would look at. And then once we prove them, we're recording information all the way along. We'll showcase and go, this is what we decided to do, and this is how it works. It was more expensive than we thought, or it worked better or worse than we thought. And so there's always going to be a takeaway for everything that we do on the site, and to multiply our efforts, right? Like, we can only make a difference from the planet if we multiply what works. So what happens on this little site, great, but by itself it doesn't make a difference. It's got to be multiplied by thousands of times, and that's part of who we are and what we want to do at this site, is really do that multiplication.
Great, thank you, Philip. The next question is from Brian Hickey at the River Institute. He's asking, what is the plan for the tower?
There's always someone who asks that question. Thanks, Brian. The tower, I can say that I don't know. I know that at some point that people are looking at what is going to happen with this building. I mean, it's 80 feet tall. It's 34 feet across at the bottom. So it's huge, and it's empty, as you can see by the pictures. I mean, my personal opinion is that to ensure that that something different happens that has happened in the past. So as you saw by the previous pictures, it's about every 50 years that someone's had to fix up the tower because part of it has crumbled down, right? So the previous owner, the Websters, for 1967, for Canada's 100th birthday, they rebuilt that whole top level because it had crumbled down, as you saw in one of the pictures. But here am I 50 years later having to redo all the inside of the tower because it was falling down. So it seems to me that now, sure, I could leave it, but 50 years from now someone would have to step up and do that again. And I think we protect old buildings by giving them a new life. So just like we're doing with the chart house, we fixed up the bones, so the stone is the structure has been regenerated, and so and it'll be used currently today, and people will appreciate it, touch it, feel it, and want to keep it as part of their lives. We have to figure that out for the tower. Honestly, if you've got anyone listening has a great idea for it, I'm all ears, because to me, I think that in my time, we need to figure that out. So in the next 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, it needs to come back into the community. And I mean, I've been up to the top of it when the scaffolding was there, and I mean the views are fantastic from up there. You see way down the river, way up the river, and I mean it's just beautiful. But you know, is that all there is? Is it a lookout? I mean, to me, it has to be an active part. So maybe there needs to be 3 or 4 floors in there that have some kind of function. And you know, I wish it was easy, because I would have done it already, because I think it's that important. But I honestly am really, really looking forward to someone having the light bulb and being able to do something, because to me it's super important. But Brian, I don't have the answer to that question.
Thank you, Philip. I'll have one more question before I say goodbye to everybody who's watching from your TV, but we can continue the question period after that. So the question is from Randy. He's asking, what is your source of funding other than grants?
That's a good question. So, I mean, there's funding, I guess, for different things. Like I've been, I sold my business 2 years ago, and I've been, funding so far. So I've funded all the repairs to the tower, and I'm funding the reconstruction and restoration of the chart house. You know, when you look at bigger site-wide things like Brian asked about the tower, I mean, the other thing we're talking about is, since I'm looking at this picture, is you see where the old wharf was. You see the stone spit coming out. I mean, that was a big wharf. Wouldn't it be great if the community, had a wharf that they could come down to and walk and really connect to the water? Those are all really big dollar projects, and funding will have to be found for that. So, a grant is great for a project. As we're going for this Eco Action grant, which will be great to share, that environmental restoration cost. But basically, I think that as different people use it, so if someone wants to use the tower and has figured out a great way, well then, I would think that they would be willing to invest in fixing it up. And as long as we're under the umbrella of the Living Community Challenge and the Living Building Challenge, that will maintain control over the ecological impact and the look and the connection to the community and so on. And to me, the same with the other buildings. The stables is are beautiful, large, but need a lot of work. And I think it'll take, piece by piece, someone who's willing to join the team and invest in the same vision that we have, and say, I'll step up and do this piece and use it. And then we build and fix the property that way.
Thank you, Philip. I'm just going to say goodbye to everybody watching from your TV, and then we'll continue. So everyone watching from home, thank you again for tuning in to Science and Nature Untapped. Our next event will be April 7th with Alison Derry, who will be speaking about invasive species. And then on May 5th, we'll have the year in review for the River Institute. So we look forward to seeing you again. I hope you have a great evening. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. So we have more questions. We have lots of questions for you guys.
All right.
So Randy, he has a follow-up question, and he said, I guess the idea is to have this place as a template for social and environmental solutions other people can use in their own homes or neighborhood?
Absolutely. And for it to be a real hub for that. So we're not saying that we have all the answers, right? I figure, I've got the answers for some things. I'm an engineer by training, but that's only part of the picture. I think there's arts, culture, science has to be all and so many different disciplines in science. Biomimicry. When I took that course, you realize, you need people across the sciences. You need biologists sitting at the table with an architect, sitting at the table with an engineer, and people and artists and so on to make things work. So it's that's what it's going to take, and this place really needs to be the launch pad for that, for those kind of solutions. And I really look forward to getting traction on that front, where groups come and say, oh, can I join your teams? Can I work? There's some way that I can contribute, and we welcome all those groups with open arms.
And maybe I could just jump in on the demonstration idea as well. So we are one of about 20 Living Community Challenge projects around the world. And that disappoints me greatly, actually, because I think they just should be popping up everywhere. So when we first discovered this, really, my goal was to bring Living Building Challenge and Living Community Challenge to the awareness of folks, especially in the eastern half of Canada, where there's almost nothing going on in this regard. And the founder is Canadian, and nobody's talking about him either. So we will have him on one day. And anyway, so it's our goal that we really do inspire communities across Canada and around the world, frankly, to get into this path of regeneration in their building and design choices.
Thank you, Michelle. So Brian, he left a comment. He said, "This is not a question, just a comment. I'm so impressed by your vision and the way you're integrating environmental health, human health, and social issues."
Great. Thank you, Brian. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
And so the next question we have from Randy again. He says, maybe for the tower, how about a spiral staircase with the walls used as a gallery space?
Oh, that it's the only, that it's great. I just think about the stairs. I mean, first of all, the spiral staircase would look fantastic from the bottom. It would really look great. I know from going up and down the stairs when when all the scaffolding was there, that you would just go, do I really want to go back to the top? Because I've been up there and then forgot my phone, and then have to run down to get the phone and then go back up because I wanted to take a picture. And it's, you realize that, okay, I'm 60. There are a lot of people that, and I know we toured up when the scaffolding was there. The crew and people in the community. We had a day where we toured people up to the top, and I mean there were some elderly people that just had lived in the community and never, of course, been, because no one's been to the top unless you were a worker in the mill. So people who had seen it their whole life wanted to get to the top and see it. But a lot of people who are younger either weren't in good enough shape to walk up and down all those flights of stairs, or were afraid of heights. So those are the two things we found. And the other thing is you can see the building tapers quite a bit. So while it's 35 feet at the bottom, it's only 17 feet at the top. So you basically lose half the width. So by the time you get to the top, it gets pretty, it's sort of choking. The stairs would choke in. So, we've been thinking about an elevator. Maybe an elevator with a small central shaft would be able to get you to the top. Certainly, if you're not physically, able to make it. I mean, it would be, you don't want only fit and able people to be able to get the view up there, because it really is stunning. But I love the art idea on the walls, because it would be great to tangle in the history as well. But I know, when we open the chart house in the fall, there's, the ribbon cutting and all that is going to be for, as a gallery. The walls will be covered with the history of the site. And, I think pictures on the stone walls is a great idea.
Thank you, Randy, for your questions. Let's see. The next one is from, well, it's anonymous. I don't know who it's from, but they're asking, or I'm curious to know what led you to the name Door Number 1.
Yeah, that was, it was hard to come up with a name, I have to say, that captured it. We went through all kinds of them, and we came to Door Number 1 out of the idea of that old iconic game show. where people had the choice to pick door number 1, door number 2, door number 3, and if you got it right, so to speak, your world could change with the riches of whatever was behind the one door, and behind another door is not, the choices were not as good. And so we actually like this idea of thinking about choices and about choosing a door to go through that really is leading us on the path we need to go to regenerate the world. And so the idea was, and the reason we ended up with actually 3 doors in our logo, although we are door number 1, was to say kind of this idea that there are lots of choices every single day that we face. And we need to realize that we can make choices every day that can lead to a better world. And we can also make choices that don't lead to a better world, and in fact lead to a worse off situation than we're in now across any of the social, environmental, cultural issues, health, whatever. So it's this idea of let's all, come together and figure out what our choices are and how we can choose door number 1 into the future that we really want to build for ourselves and our children and our grandchildren, generations to follow.
Thank you, Michèle. So Randy's leaving a comment. He says, thank you so much for your commitment to the site. We're from Ottawa, but we often drive by it.
Wow, that's great. It is beautiful. Great. And it'll be great to welcome people there. It really will be.
And we have Elaine Kennedy who says, thank you. And we have Brian saying, I was thinking the world's most expensive bat roost for the tower.
Oh. It's funny, there on any given morning there's a whole circle of birds around the top, and I know Todd, who's the project manager and Michèle's husband, a really good friend. He says, he calls it the birdhouse. So it's kind of that same idea, right? If we did something at the top, could it be something like a bird's nest, or an outcropping like that. So the birds are up there all the time. And what that also means is that when you're standing at the bottom looking up, you've got to be careful because there's a ring of contact between you and the birds. So it's an experience for sure. But the birds are there. It's part of, and it's great actually if you walk quietly up to the walls. And the doorway, you can hear the birds chattering away because it gets amplified by the hollow insides, and you hear them flapping back and forth. It really is a very peaceful setting.
I cannot wait to visit.
Yeah.
Other things that people are suggesting are telescope at the top.
All right.
And we also have a question from someone asking about the artwork behind you, Phil.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. Oh, yeah, that's, I found that years ago. It's actually a piece by Christian Morisseau, so Norval Morisseau's son. And it's a beautiful piece, the black and gold, and the message, the title of it is called The Circle of Life, which is, I was told that the lower part is him and the upper part is the Thunderbird, who is Norval Morisseau's symbol, and it's that connection, as you can see by the threads, the connection of the father and son as the circle. So I found it very touching, and I just love it.
How are you guys doing? How much time do you have left for us? We have a few more questions coming in. Okay, great. We have another comment from Brian. He says, it sucks when young people can't keep up with us. I'm not quite sure what he was referring to, but I thought I would share. Somebody was saying it would be neat to integrate the door number 1 theme into what the tower becomes.
Yeah, we'll have to think about that.
We hadn't thought about that.
Mm-hmm. And we have a message from Guylaine. She says, welcome to Maitland, Philip. What an interesting direction for this site. And I believe this person also commented that they're a neighbor to Maitland Tower.
Yes, yeah, Guylaine. Hello, Guylaine. Yes, we've met, and you know, we've had a tour and walk around, and she's involved in the Brockville, the seed banks, and you know, we just can't wait to really have COVID out of the way so that we can work together and share our adventures there. It's wonderful. Thanks, Guylaine. Great to meet you. You know, we've met great people just, you know, who walk along and are excited to share. So it's wonderful.
And I have another question from Bonnie, who's asking about the windmill. She says, do you plan on, or the tower, she says, do you plan on adding the windmill to the top of the tower?
Oh, you know, it's something we thought about. You know, it's interesting that when it was built as a windmill in 1828, that by George Longley, so he's the guy who built the mill, that he took the blades down after 9 years, and the reason was that there was not enough sustained wind. So, I mean, I think we all know from living along the St. Lawrence that there are days like this picture where you just generate no power and you couldn't run your mill. And so it became a business decision where he just said, the wind was not strong enough and regular enough for it to be worthwhile. And of course, the windmills back then, you know, had a lot of friction, so it took a lot of wind to turn them. And he ended up buying a steam engine and running the whole mill on steam. So in a way, he's already said that the windmill idea doesn't work. I think it would be interesting to have certainly a wind turbine of some kind, not to generate power, because I think it still doesn't make sense there for the same reason that there's still not enough wind really to generate power. But I think to have it as an art piece where it spins and is sort of reminds us of its you know days past, I think would be great, and I'm totally into doing that.
Amazing. Thank you, Philip. We have a comment from Melissa. She says, thank you so much for this presentation and the projects underway. So very inspiring. I can't wait to visit the site and get involved.
Wow, that's awesome. Thank you.
And so for now, I don't see any more questions coming in, but I do have one of my own. So I was just wondering if you had in mind to have a kind of an artist residency on site at some point.
Well, you know, one of the frameworks that I really like, you know, to refer to when I think of the future of the site is an imaginarium, and it's a word, if you look it up, that it's where people can imagine what the future can look like, and that it's at an intersection of science, arts, culture, spirituality, nature, music, and that's plays to kind of the diversity that I'm looking for. Like, because I don't think, you know, science can't solve the world's problems, just like you know, business can't solve the world's problems, but that when everybody's together and we respect each other's specialty and knowledge, that I think that is the kind of space that this needs to be. And so, you know, art for sure will be 100% embedded in there. Whether we can make it a residency, you know, I don't know, but I mean, physically something equivalent. You know, I think it would be interesting to have several sort of residencies over different topics, and you know, perhaps as the different projects unfold, we could do that. I mean, I think art gets often left out of the design equation for buildings and products and things in general, and you know, and to me, it should be integral to things moving forward. So, if not a residency, an important role for sure.
Great, thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. Are you interested in the first one? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. I mean, I didn't want to plug myself in there, but but it's very inspiring, and I think, you know, art can really it can help us see things. It can help us see things, you know, and it does it in a different way. So yeah. Anyways. All right. I think that's it for the questions for tonight. There's no new comments or anything, but Yeah, so I guess thank you so much for the time to present to us, and as you can see, so many of us are very excited about the project, and we'll be watching very closely, if not contributing to it. So I suppose we'll just say goodnight to everybody who's watching us live. Thank you again for tuning into Science and Nature Untapped. And just as a reminder, what was it, April 7th, we have invasive species with Dr. Allison Derry, and then on May 5th, we have our year in review. So see you next month.
Thank you, and thanks for hosting, Stephanie.
No problem.
Yeah, thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Yes, it's been great. Good night.
Good night.